And when I woke up this morning, I was feeling pretty dangerous.
And if we're talking tight ends and we're going into round 2, maybe round 3, give me Ian Thomas, please. Let's just do the damn thing.
Just based on giving his overall ability. Again, I like his arm. I think he can make every throw.
The pick at number 12 is in.
Welcome to Cover One, the NFL Draft Podcast. I am Russell Brown, and joining me, as always, CP Christian Page. My man, how are we doing?
I'm doing just fine. How are you?
I'm doing well. I actually have my voice somewhat back today. I had lost it for like 3-4 days being on vacation up north, karaoke bar, having a little bit too much fun, things like that. So you know how I get sometimes. So that's how it was, and I couldn't talk really that much for the last 2 days. So today I'm glad to be back in the swing of things.
Good to hear.
Yeah, and I'm glad that we are back in the swing of things now that we've kind of got vacations out of the way, 4th of July's out of the way, doing different things outside of the football business for both of us. So a lot of things are changing, but we're having a lot of fun, and we're still breaking down guys. And that's what we're going to do today. We're going to talk about 2-3 guys that we've watched over the last week. We're going to have some fun with the Homerun Derby that happened on Monday. If you guys are baseball fans, obviously you saw Pete Alonso of the New York Mets. He won the Homerun Derby, won $1 million. But it was very entertaining with Vlad Guerrero Jr. and Jock Peterson just going at it with each other, hitting 35 bombs back to back. It was awesome. And then we've got some recent news in the NFL draft world from 2 years ago with some busts. So we're going to compile some lists over the next couple of weeks of players that we've seen over the last couple of years that not have really turned out or panned out in the NFL. So it's going to be a lot of fun to talk about that. And then we'll touch briefly on Jalen Thompson and his supplemental draft stock of where he went today as that happened this afternoon at 1 p.m. Eastern time. So we got a lot to get into. Let's get into it. Let's talk about a player that we've watched over the last week or so. I definitely know you've written a great report on this guy for summer scouting as we've been going back and forth on this, which you guys, of course, can check out over at cover1.net. It's a ton of fun that CP and I get to kind of bounce ideas off each other, but also, dive into the film and check out guys for the summer as we prepare for this upcoming season. So let's start with your guy. Who's the one guy that you've watched in the last week or so that's really stood out?
Marvin Wilson, the defensive tackle from Florida State, he jumps off the page immediately. And before this gets taken away, though it did because it was kind of a little teaser on Twitter, and I said, could he be this year's Quinnen Williams? Now, let me clarify. Quinnen Williams is one of the most gifted athletes ever at the defensive tackle position. He is an elite player, and I think he's going to have an incredible NFL career. Smooth athlete, everything like that. How I meant that is, last year at this time, how many of us, generally speaking, knew Quinnen Williams had all this potential and was going to be not a top 10 pick, not a top 3 round pick, but a top 5 pick? And I think that's where this comparison comes in, because Quinnen Williams was sitting behind a guy like Daron Payne, nose tackle, ended up waiting his time, and then Quinnen Williams comes in, has an all-star, all-American year, becomes a top 5 draft pick to the New York Jets. Marvin Wilson sitting behind guys like Frederick Jones and DeMarcus Christmas, and he only started 5 games, more of a spot starter. They kind of revved up a little bit as the season got on. So a similar situation. I think that's where the comparison comes in. But I also think Marvin Wilson is a very talented guy. It starts with his versatility up front. He kind of has the body at 6'5", 315 pounds, to kind of play that zero tech, that nose guard shade position. And he does really well at that alignment. But he has the versatility. He stretches anywhere from, the 3 technique if he's not playing that nose, or sometimes slips out to the 5, and even kind of like a 6-7 tech, depending on how he wants to, continue his pass rush route. But he has a lot of versatility, and that also kind of tells me that he has a lot of athletic ability, a lot of intelligence as well. So going forward with that, he has exceptional contact balance. You're rarely going to see him on the ground. He'll get hit in the numbers, but he always has active, violent hands to disengage, and he keeps his body square to the ball and the quarterback, which I think is something that shouldn't go unnoticed, because you'll see a lot of guys that they're sitting there, they're grinding, trying to get off blocks, and then it turns out that they get off the block, but the play's way behind them now, or it's way in front of them now, and so they've lost it. So I think when he partners that athletic ability to keep his body square and keep his eyes on the development of the play, he trusts his instincts enough to break free from that contact, and he keeps the play in front of him. And I think that's something that those little things that I think we get lost in when we're analyzing a lot of defensive linemen. So he has that, but I think it really starts out, and I said he has the intricacies of being a really solid pass rusher with the upper body and then having that athletic ability. But it all starts with his motor. This guy never gives up on a play. There was one clip I had, I believe it was against Florida. He was shutting off his block. It was kind of a zone read, a zone outside tackle run, and he had no shot at the play. I mean, he's a 315-pound guy. The guy hits pretty much the second level already. You see number 21, which is cool in itself. Marvin Wilson wears number 21 as a defensive tackle, but you see 21 chugging it all the way down the field. And even though the Florida guy scored a touchdown, Marvin Wilson was still en route to make that play, even though he was 20 yards behind the play. So I think it starts with his motor. He's not an exceptional athlete, but he has enough athleticism there and his versatility as well. I really like his upper body. He does not like to stay resting in the mud. He does not like to be held up at the point of attack. He is always going to fight, even if, it's poor pad level or he's locked up, even if he's double teamed. The guy is double teamed all the time. But his motor and his ability to come disengage, and then even though not elite level athleticism, but enough athleticism to keep his body square with the body control and that versatility. I mean, this guy, he's a first round talent. There's no doubt in my mind.
Well, and the best thing is like you're not the only one seeing it. Phil Steele, we all know about Phil Steele, his amazing magazine that he puts out every year with preseason All-Americans and the breakdowns of the teams and everything. He's got him as a second-team All-American choice right now for the preseason. So, he is certainly turning a lot of heads. He's 6'5", 314. Definitely sounds like one of my guys with the high motor and the ability to not stay in the mud and get away from the blocks. So I'm intrigued by him. I have not watched him myself, so I'm excited to see what he does. 42 tackles, 3.5 sacks last year. Not bad for a guy that, had 5 starts?
Right.
So, again, situational player, played in different spots. I get that part. But, again, 5 starts, that productive, pretty impressive. I can't wait to watch him. Of course, you guys can check out the breakdown on him on the summer scouting piece at cover1.net, or, of course, you can download the Cover One app for free at your app store or on Google Play. All you've got to do is search Cover One. You'll find it. You search it, you download it, you love it, with all of our great written content, video content, whatever it is that we do. So check that out with the app and everything else. But the player that I've got is Julian Okwara from Notre Dame, edge rusher. This guy he's definitely, if you have not watched him, CP, he is definitely one of your type of guys. And you'll see him, and he's going to stand out instantly at 6'5", 240. And this guy and it's not like 6'5", 240 Brian Burns. He's every bit of 6'5", 240, and he could probably put on about 10 pounds more of muscle. But he is Romeo Okwara's brother, who's in the NFL, plays for my Detroit Lions. But last year was a big year for him as a junior. Stood out, 39 tackles, 12.5 tackles for loss, 8 sacks. But from the football standpoint of it, away from the box score, this guy has got kind of it, in my opinion. He's got this ability to get to heels with ease. He can bend down the line of scrimmage, and it seems as if the motor, as you mentioned with Marvin Wilson, is there for Okwara. He always shows that backside pursuit, or whether it's front side as well, doesn't matter, play side, backside. Wherever he's going, he's showing his ability to get to the football, putting his nose to the football, and he's making plays. He's disruptive. He's got good hands, and he's versatile too. He can rush inside. He can stand up. He can go from either side or either edge. It doesn't matter, left to right. So he really stood out to me. I think he's a player that We'll be talking much more as the months move along, and I'm excited to write up about him. He'll be a player that I talk about for our summer scouting piece probably within the next week or so. I've got some other things I'm working on, like Jake Fromm and this weekend scouting from this past week throughout the 4th of July. So a lot of stuff cooking up on my end, but I can't wait to talk about Julian Okwara more with some written content. So if you have not checked him out, definitely check him out. And also, check out his teammate, Khalid Kareem, is another just sensational edge rusher. And I wouldn't say sensational, but he really stands out as well. 42 tackles, 10.5 tackles for loss, 4.5 sacks. And something that stood out with me, or with him to me, was the length that he provides, the arm length at 6'4", 265. So he's stocky, but he had 5 pass deflections. He always had his head up towards the quarterback, and he just seems as if he's got kind of it as well, a player that can do a lot of the same things that Okwara can do, whether it is rushing from the inside or standing up off the edge. So these two guys, they get along very well. They're teammates. Kareem is actually working out with former NFL defensive end Marcus Howard. So he's getting a lot of coaching points from former NFL players. So I'm curious to see if he's another one of those risers as well. So the Notre Dame defensive line all the way across the board is really, really talented. Have you been able to check out any of those guys at all?
Okwara I have a little bit because, I guess it's Okwara, but the video that you had, I think, was Kareem, but it's a Stanford clip, and he's going up against Walker Little, who's a left tackle that we're going to be talking about here out of Stanford for many, many months to come. And Kareem is listed at 6'4", and he's sitting here long-arming a 6'7" left tackle, which
right.
I think is incredible. One, long-arming as a defensive end can be hard in itself. Also, the flexibility that he's executing, and he gets the pressure on the quarterback. That's incredible. And then going with Okwara, you talked about the versatility. He can stand up. He can put his his hand in the dirt. This Notre Dame defense, and I know the Notre Dame defense has never been really the issue since Brian Kelly's been there. It's always been the consistency of the offense. Because one, you have the guys, like last year, it's like, well, they're undefeated. They deserve to be in the playoff. But who have they really played? And you're like, well, most of the time they do schedule a solid preseason opponents, but it never really works out. But it's always the offense that kind of deteriorates. But the defense seems to mostly be strong, as you see every year. There's NFL guys, whether Notre Dame has a good season or not. But I think these are two guys that partner and go with this Notre Dame defense as a whole. But just following some of your videos on Twitter, these guys splash. And, it's not just glimpses, it's consistency, which I think goes a long way as well.
Yeah, and that's the important thing. Watch the plays from start to finish and watch every single play. Don't watch the highlights. Highlights give you an idea, but you got to watch the full game to really understand and generalize the strengths and the weaknesses of the player. But if you guys want to check out, of course, the videos that he's talking about, find me on Twitter at RussNFLDraft, or, of course, follow CP at _Christian Page. So let's have some fun. Let's do the Homerun Derby part. I can't wait to do this because I want to see the 4 players that you pick. Monday was a big day for baseball. I know we don't talk about baseball a ton, but I thought it was a lot of fun. It was one of the better home run derbies we've seen in recent years. And I know there's not a lot of baseball fans out there, and some people don't even know who Vlad Guerrero Jr. is. Some people probably don't even know who Vladimir Guerrero is. But it was a very fun home run derby. Like I mentioned, Jock Peterson, Vlad Jr., these guys going at it. You had Ronald Acuna. He was lighting it up. These guys were going at it. It was awesome. Pete Alonso as well. But I wanted to have some fun, and I wanted to see what we could compile here. 4 names each from the NFL. We were going to do the NFL draft side of things, but there's so many different names. I think the NFL is a little bit easier to do. Plus, those guys are a little bit more established. So let's go with some guys that are just absolute freaks of nature that would absolutely crush a baseball, but would also make it incredibly entertaining to watch them at a home run derby. So I'll give you actually the first pick. Who would be the guy that you would go first?
All right, so only one, and we're going to save the quarterback for the end because you said the disclaimer we had to choose one quarterback for our 4 guys.
Yep.
This may be a little surprising, but I just think he would have he's super athletic, and he's probably actually just a gifted athlete all the way around. and he's super fun. But I went with Travis Kelce. It seems like every video he's engaging with fans, and he's doing some kind of touchdown celebration. And he's just a superb athlete for the tight end and just in general. So I just think, I don't know, something maybe with the hand-eye coordination and just like the livelihood, backwards cap, let's have a little fun, let's talk a little crap. I think Travis Kelce would be really fun. I think he'd be successful too.
Yeah, that's a good one. I didn't think of the tight ends, actually. I neglected the position altogether. So if you've got all tight ends, you're golden. I'm going with the best player in the National Football League, and that's Aaron Donald. Guy's a freak of nature. He would be a hell of a lot of fun to watch. He's fun to watch on a football field. I could imagine him just cranking these baseballs for miles. So I would go Aaron Donald. And I guess I would pick a tight end named Rob Gronkowski, but he's not in the league anymore. So I'm going Aaron Donald. So you're up next with the second pick.
All right, I'll stick with potentially the second best defensive lineman in the NFL when healthy. I'm going to go with J.J. Watt. He's expressed his love for baseball. I think he's even been in batting practice with Houston, actually hit a few dingers with them. I think he does something with a charity classic where he and the Texans and the Astros have a really good relationship. I know when the floods and the hurricanes and everything was happening, he really embraced that city. So you talk about high praise from pretty much every media person, even when the cameras are turned off, his teammates and everything, it's always high praise. And the guy's freaking jacked. I mean, we're going to see home runs, and it's not like, in that celebrity softball game, how they sit there and they raise the fences up a little bit. Yeah. Keep the fences where they are. J.J. Watt's going to aim for the scoreboard, and I wouldn't bet against him for doing it.
Yeah, that was going to be my next pick, but I kind of figured you were going to go that route. So I've got to come up with a new name for the next one, but I will go with my third pick, and I'll make him number 2. And that's just because he's one of the biggest freak athletes we've ever seen, and I think he eventually here is going to have somewhat of an ego once he establishes himself. He'll be on the field. I'm not saying like flamboyant or anything like that, like over celebrating or anything like that, but DK Metcalf, I think we're kind of seeing this happening, right? Like the guy was just a freak of nature at the combine. I think, again, like I mentioned, he's a receiver. Eventually the ego's going to come out, right? He seems pretty humble right now, but he has been posting videos on Twitter like, hey, look, I can do more than just run a go route. And by the way, he's doing pretty good. Tip my hat to him. I'm going Metcalf, just power, strength. The ego is going to be there. He's going to show off a little bit. It's going to be a lot of fun.
So for my next pick, I kind of battled between two. I had to leave one off the list, but I battled between two guys that both play extremely nasty. One's a little quieter in the trenches. The other one likes to run his mouth. The guy that I left off the list is Taylor Lewan, left tackle out of Tennessee. I think this guy, you talk about one having fun, but just the competition it would add. I mean, Freddie Freeman was mic'd up for the NL team last night. Freddie Freeman's a saint for all that's given. Taylor Lewan's nowhere near that. So it would be a fun, maybe that's like a YouTube edition of a mic'd up. Sense where you could get an uncensored version. So I think it'd be entertaining. But the guy I went with he's going to play in his second year, Quentin Nelson, Indianapolis Colts. I think this guy would kind of have the level-headed approach where he's going to be a little competitive, and he's a super nice guy when he puts those pads on, and when he's hitting somebody, the video that went around where he's screaming, lays a hat on one of the linebackers. But I think this guy, he'd be competitive. He'd probably be good. Might be that stocky guy that actually has a quick swing, a lot of upper body power, where he might hit more for contact instead of overall, hitting over the fence, just given his frame. I think Quentin Nelson would be really fun to watch. Maybe the quiet assassin out of this group.
Yeah, that one would be a good one to watch. I mean, seriously, that's a good one. I like the Taylor Lewan one. I kind of want to steal it, but I'm gonna stick with the kind of the showboating and everything else. And this is a guy that has to do it after every first down, after every touchdown. It doesn't matter. Now, I have no idea if he can hit a baseball. I'm assuming he can, but I'm going to go with Ezekiel Elliott. I think with you taking Watt, this kind of turned me to this one. He's not the strongest guy in the world, but I think he would have some power in his bat, like almost like a Prince Fielder. And I think it would be a lot of fun. I think he would be talking some trash, he'd be doing the little, feed me thing that he does. I think it'd be a lot of fun. So who's your quarterback?
Well, I went the obvious route here because he'd probably win the whole thing. So Russell Wilson.
Damn it.
Yeah, you're going to be it. I mean, you could go 2.0 with Patrick Mahomes, but you want to take Russell Wilson? If we're going to stick with the chatter, and this would be a really fun guy to mic up, let's put Phillip Rivers in the competition. Let's get all 25 kids out there. Let's all give him a jersey. Let's have a good time. And he's going to keep it clean, but he's also going to give some trash talk. He's probably pretty good too. But, yeah, I think we're not going with one North Carolina State quarterback. Let's go to another one.
I mean, I'm all for it. I was going to go Russell Wilson, but you took him. So I was going to go with Matt Stafford now, and that was going to be my quarterback, simply not because of the whole, but it just simply how many times I hear on a Sunday afternoon how Matt Stafford is best friends with Clayton Kershaw, former baseball player. He can do it, probably more so of a pitcher and everything else, but I would go that route, or Patrick Mahomes. I mean, there's a lot of quarterbacks. Tom Brady would probably be just pretty good at it,
I would just like to see Brady attempt it.
That's true. But I feel like with just how competitive he is, like he would get it after like 5 swings and then just boom, it would be over.
Yeah. And then everybody would hate him again.
Yeah. I don't know. It'd be a lot of fun. But if you guys want to play along with us, feel free to comment below on Spreaker.com, on iTunes, Google Play, Spotify, however you go about listening to this podcast, or of course, find us again on Twitter at Russ NFL Draft or at _Christian Page. So let's jump into the next category, and that is some NFL busts that have happened recently. We don't need to start big like with Jamarcus Russell or anything. Those ones are obvious. But really, since we've been scouting, I've been doing it since 2010. You've been doing it since, like 2014?
I have no idea.
Maybe sooner than that, right? Maybe sooner than that. So it's been a while, but we've seen a lot of different guys. It doesn't really matter whether you've watched them a ton or not, but I would like to kind of compile a list, maybe 1 or 2 names each week, and see what we can do and maybe eliminate some guys and really just say who is the biggest bust of all time. I don't know if you want to start. I can start. It doesn't really matter to me, whatever you prefer.
I'll go real quick, and it's a guy that it's I don't know if he's in bust territory, but as the NFL draft was getting closer and closer, he just kept gaining steam because of consistency. And that's Vernon Hargreaves. He was picked number 11 overall by the Tampa Bay Buccaneers in the 2016 NFL draft. And the reason why I'm saying him, and going into the draft process, he was a little slender. Could he be a consistent outside corner? Because when you're picking a cornerback, at least in that first half, top 20 of the first round, you're looking for an island corner that's going to be locked down. And I think he leaves both of those boxes unchecked. Now, can you have, with how the game's evolved, in a sense where you're going to get 3, potentially 4 cornerbacks, depending on, running a nickel type situation where you could have a guy like Xavier Howard come in and be one of the more underrated guys with some value in that draft pick? Absolutely. But with Vernon Hargreaves, of what he was supposed to be picked just outside of that top 10, you're seeing Tampa Bay. They've drafted 2 Auburn cornerbacks in the past year. They drafted N.J. Stewart a year ago. He's not going to make the cut. I mean, he may make the cut for the roster, but he's not going to sit there and be a consistent starter. But Hargreaves is just underachieved in the fact of where he should have been. Because for a while, it was – Eli Apple jumped him in the draft, and, he was a solid rookie, and then he's kind of gone a little downhill from there. But I think just where Hargreaves was evaluated and how he should be essentially an all-star conversation right now, I think he's definitely fallen well short of the mark.
Yeah, that's a tough one because I'm in agreement with you because I had really high hopes for him, but it just seems like it's not going to pan out, it's tough to say. Maybe he does need a change of scenery and another opportunity elsewhere, but it doesn't seem like it's just gonna work out. It doesn't. It feels like time and time again, every single year, the Bucs are talking about Hargreaves. Oh, we got Hargreaves. He's going to get it together this year. He's going to get it together. He plays one of the harder positions in football to develop, and this and that. And again, he's a totally different player than what he was at Florida, in my opinion. So I think that's a good one. I think that's a good spot to start. I'm going to follow up with a guy that maybe some wouldn't call him a bust from 2 years ago, but that would be Malik McDowell from the 2017 NFL draft. And that's not because of just recently of what happened where he got into an altercation with a cop and got tased and fought and everything else like that. But I've been pretty much on the boomer bust thing with Malik McDowell since the very beginning of 2017. And I viewed him as a bust simply because of the things that I had actually heard through Michigan State. And he was one of those guys that a lot of the times when it came up about character, he was the guy that was on top of the list. He was drafted 35th overall. There was a reason why he went 35th overall, and that was because so many teams saw the red flags and they didn't want to touch him in the first round. But had he not had those red flags, he would have been a first-round pick. And had he not had those red flags, he probably would be a pretty decent football player right now on the NFL level. I mean, he ran a 4.85 40 at 6'6", 295, so that's moving. He almost had 35-inch length arms. He had a 28.5-inch vertical. Three-cone drill was decent at 7.69 for his size. 23 reps in the bench, but the big number that stood out with the athletic ability was the 20-yard shuttle at 4.53, which is pretty good for a guy, again, that's 6'6". But he was a player at Michigan State that he stood out in every statistical column as a sophomore. And then he comes into his junior year, and this is what really made me go, okay, something's not right here. And he said, I won't go pro unless I'm a top 3 pick. And then every single game, and I kid you not, I watched every single game as I've watched every single Michigan State game forever. And he missed every single play of every single series, not every single play, but one play for every single series, it felt like, because of he was on the sidelines gasping for air or he was being walked off the field with an injury. He only played 9 games that year. So it was just all over the place. And he was a guy that unfortunately did not go in the first round. He could have gone in the first round. He was another, just one of those guys that it didn't work out from off the field. I know he got into the incident with the 4-wheeler and everything else, but at the same time, you're in the NFL. You have to be responsible for you. Everything that you decide to do is on you. It's not on anybody else. And you are the one riding a 4-wheeler before your rookie minicamp. And there's just reasons why he's never played a snap in the NFL. And I think when we look back on it, he's got one of the most potential out of anybody. I remember when guys were saying he's a top 5 pick, and they still said that. And I'm like, dudes. And at that time, in 2017, I'm 400 followers. Nobody's listening to what I got to say. I'm just some guy, But at the same time, it's there's something wrong here. There's red flags. I've been hearing it because I'm close to the university, But it's just unfortunate, and he's one of those guys that will be on that list, I think, when the time comes. Maybe right now is a little early, but I'm putting him on it.
No, you definitely should. And he was one of the more interesting yet kind of intriguing prospects leading up to the draft itself because, again, like you said, a lot of hype coming into his final year due to his past, statistical production, his athleticism, this, that, and the other. There was a lot of hype. Top 5, top 10 hype coming into his final year. And then he was okay, but like you said, whether it was facing injury situations or, just not being well conditioned or not having that motor that goes far and above some athleticism and some production from a defensive line. Because if you put in the effort, you can play a lot. You may not be a primary guy and get the big bucks, but you will play and you will see the field constantly. And so I think that's something he struggled with. And then just throughout the draft process, it was one thing after another, whether, just maturity issues. So it was almost like the draft media, along with the teams, were kind of prepared to be like, okay, don't be surprised if this guy doesn't pan out. So it's not shocking, but it is based on what we saw from the potential standpoint at Michigan State. So, I think I don't know. I want to be optimistic about his future, but I'm just not sure. The next guy I'm going to go with was in the 2015 NFL draft. He hasn't necessarily been a bust, but he's just kind of been like, okay, it's time to take that next step. And I'm going to stick in the state of Florida, 14th pick overall in the 2015 draft, Miami Dolphins, Devante Parker. Now, Devante Parker was being evaluated as one of the top receivers in this draft. I know Amari Cooper was there. Obviously, he was by far, in my opinion, the number one wideout in this class. Kevin White, we know the inconsistency and along with the injury history as well. So Devante Parker going forward. And I'm saying this because it feels like every offseason, who's going to break out? Who's going to break out for Miami? Who can get them over the hump offensively? Devante Parker seems to always be the answer. I'm sure he's the answer this year too, but he just always struggles to consistently find the field. When he's on the field, he's not consistently productive. Last year he played in 11 games, started 7 of them, targeted 47 times, 24 catches, 309 yards, 1 touchdown. He has 9 receiving touchdowns in 4 seasons. He has 31 starts in 4 seasons. So when you're picked as that alpha dog type receiver for Miami in 2015, you want to see that production. Now Miami did sign him for another 2 years, so there's still hope in him. But I think some injury history seems like he's always on the questionable list going forward. Devante Parker, again, he's not necessarily a bust, but I'm just ready for him to take that next step. Disappointing, not a bust quite yet. But I think Miami's probably getting frustrated. But maybe with a consistent, offensive front, maybe if you can find a healthy running game, and now you have a consistent quarterback, we hope, with Josh Rosen, I think Devante Parker is in a perfect situation to succeed if he can stay healthy and consistent on the field.
That's a good one. Devante Parker, that's a good one. I'm glad he didn't take the guy I was going with, though. And if you really look at 2015, there's a couple of guys. We might have to spend like a show on it, to be honest. But I'm glad he didn't pick Kevin White because that's the guy I'm going with. 7th overall pick. I remember when that draft happened, people were talking about him being a top 5 pick, maybe Oakland, being better than Amari Cooper. He had 109 receptions coming out of college. He had almost 1,500 yards receiving. He was a freak of nature. He ran a 4.35. He was 6'3", 215. He had a great 3-cone drill too. It was like 6'8", or something like that, if I remember correctly. So he was awesome, but he just could not stay healthy. And I get it. Like, can you really blame health as part of the problem? No, but at the same time, it happens. You're a 7th overall pick. You're supposed to be doing well. You're, a 2nd team All-American, 1st team All Big 12. You had all these highlight reel catches and everything else, and the tape stood out. And then you go to the NFL and you have 25 catches and no touchdowns, and you played in like 7 games. It's just one of those things where it's like you're not playing enough football. He started in 5 games in his career, like 3 seasons through. He's now on Arizona. Maybe he turns it around, but at 27, the window is getting really small for Kevin White to be anything more than an NFL bust. So Kevin White's the guy for me as my number 2. So I think we can leave it at 2 and 2. I got the names written down, and I think maybe we could pick this up again next week. But I would like to talk briefly on Jalen Thompson, drafted in the supplemental draft today. 5th-round pick to Arizona. The Cardinals get him, so they will surrender a 5th-round pick for the 2020 draft. So that kind of has an impact there. But Jalen Thompson, I don't think either one of us really scouted him too much because he wasn't coming out, so we don't really know much about him. But Jalen Thompson is a 6-foot, 200-pound defensive back that will be paired up with Budda Baker, Byron Murphy. I think it's going to be a good blend for Arizona and what they've got. Again, not a lot's out there on Jalen Thompson just yet. I didn't watch a ton of his tape when I was watching Washington State. I was more so watching their offense for James Williams and Gardner Minshew and some of the players, and Andre Dillard, of course. So their offense is, I think, a lot more fun than their defense. But Jalen Thompson, again, joining a mix of Budda Baker, Byron Murphy, some undersized defensive backs. Thompson will fit that mold with them. It'll be interesting to see what happens with them. But again, time will tell, but that's the only name taken in today's supplementary draft. In the 5th round, Jalen Thompson of the Arizona Cardinals, or now of the Arizona Cardinals, formerly of the Washington State Cougars. So again, a lot of fun. We'll see what happens. But for CP, I'm Russell Brown. Until next time, this is Cover One, the NFL Draft Podcast.